It was supposed to be just another Sunday night broadcast. The lights were bright, the cameras rolled, and millions tuned in for life, liberty and Levin. But what unfolded live on Fox News left viewers across the nation speechless. Mark Levin, the fiery conservative voice, known for his unwavering conviction and commanding presence, did something no one expected. He broke down in tears, and then, he resigned. As the studio fell silent, a man who had spent decades shaping political conversation suddenly looked human, vulnerable, and heartbreakingly sincere. This is the story of how it all unfolded. For years, Mark Levin had been a towering figure in conservative media, a constitutional scholar, author, and the unapologetic Great One, as many of his fans called him. His show wasn't just a program, it was a platform for millions who felt their voices weren't being heard. But behind the sharp monologues and thunderous rants, Levin had been carrying a private weight. Colleagues noticed he seemed more reflective in recent months. The man who once opened each segment with ironclad certainty now paused more often, as if questioning whether the fight was still worth it. He looked tired, one producer whispered off camera. Like he was wrestling with something deeper than politics. No one imagined what was coming next. That night began like any other episode. The iconic opening music played. The Fox News logo flashed across the screen. Levin adjusted his papers, took a breath, and greeted the audience with his usual intensity. "Good evening, America," he began. "Tonight, I want to talk to you, not as a broadcaster, not as a pundit, but as a man." Viewers leaned closer. It was an unusual start. There was no outrage, no political target, no fiery declaration, just an uneasy calm in his voice. Levin continued, his hands trembling slightly on the desk. "For years, I've fought for what I believed was right. I've argued, I've debated, I've challenged. But tonight, I need to say something I never thought I would." The control room went quiet. Producers exchanged worried looks. Something was different. Levin glanced down at his notes but couldn't continue reading. His eyes welled up. The camera zoomed in slightly, and the world saw something rarely seen from him, vulnerability. "I've spent my life defending this country," he said softly. "But lately, I've wondered if I've lost sight of the very thing I was defending." He paused. A single tear rolled down his cheek. He tried to continue, but his voice broke again. "For years, I told people to stand firm, to never give up. But somewhere along the way, I forgot what that meant for myself." Social media began to light up instantly. Clips of Levin's trembling voice spread across Twitter and TikTok. Fans were confused, others concerned. Was this a breakdown? A confession? Or something even more profound? Levin gathered himself and stared directly into the camera. "I can't do this anymore," he said simply. "Not like this." The words hit like a thunderclap. The control room gasped. The anchor, the man whose career spanned radio, books, and primetime television, was resigning. "I love this country more than anything," Levin continued, his voice cracking again. "But I've realized that somewhere along the way, the noise became louder than the truth. I don't recognize the world we're in anymore, and I can't keep pretending that shouting will fix it." The camera stayed locked on him. No commercial break. No cutaway. Just Mark Levin, raw, emotional, human. To understand why this moment hit so hard, you have to look at the years leading up to it. Levin's career wasn't built overnight. He had been a driving force in conservative thought since the Reagan era, a constitutional lawyer who turned passion into influence. But the modern media landscape had changed dramatically. The 24-hour outrage cycle, the endless stream of political division, and the pressure to perform began to weigh on him. Close friends had noticed the change. One former producer recalled, he started asking, "Does any of this even make a difference anymore?" That's when I knew he was burning out. Even his on-air demeanor shifted. The booming certainty became quieter. His arguments more reflective. Behind every broadcast was a man increasingly conflicted, between conviction and exhaustion. Back on live TV, Levin wiped his eyes and took another deep breath. "I know what people will say," he murmured. "He's quitting. Maybe I am. But I'd rather leave with my integrity than lose myself in the noise." He folded his notes and looked off camera, to the crew he'd worked with for years. Some had tears in their eyes too. They weren't just watching a colleague resign, they were witnessing the end of an era. "For every listener, every viewer who stood by me, thank you," Levin said. "You gave me purpose when I felt lost. You reminded me that America is still full of people who care. But tonight, I have to step away." There was a long pause. He added softly, "I'm not disappearing. I just need to find the truth again, without the cameras." The moment the show ended, the studio fell into stunned silence. Producers hesitated to cut to commercial. The crew hugged him. Some pleaded for him to reconsider. But Levin's mind was made up. Within hours, headlines exploded across every platform. "Mark Levin breaks down and quits live on air." "Fox News star ends show in tears." "Mark Levin's emotional farewell goes viral." Clips of the moment trended across social media. Millions of viewers flooded online forums with reactions: heartbreak, respect, disbelief. Many praised him for his honesty, calling it the most human thing they'd ever seen on TV. Others speculated about the reasons: burnout, politics, network pressure. But Levin stayed silent. Days later, Levin released a brief statement through his team. "I want to thank my viewers for years of loyalty and support. I made a decision from the heart, one that was long overdue. Sometimes you have to step away to remember why you started." The statement was brief, but powerful. It wasn't a PR-crafted note. It was a confession, from a man who had finally reached his emotional threshold. Behind the scenes, sources said Levin had been disillusioned with the direction of modern political discourse, not just at Fox, but across all media. He wanted real conversations again, one insider said. Not just shouting matches. What made Levin's breakdown resonate so deeply wasn't just that a famous anchor cried. It was that millions saw themselves in his struggle, the exhaustion, the disillusionment, the longing for something real. Levin had always been a man of words, but on that night, it was his silence that spoke loudest. He didn't just resign from a show. He walked away from the noise, from the machinery of constant outrage, from the weight of being the voice of the people, to simply be a person again. Even months later, the clip continued to circulate online. It became a kind of digital monument, a reminder that even the loudest voices sometimes break. Fans began sharing old clips of Levin's speeches, tributes, and heartfelt moments from his radio days. What emerged wasn't the image of a fallen broadcaster, but of a man who dared to be human on live TV. As one fan wrote on Twitter, he didn't quit. He woke up. And maybe, that's the real story, not of resignation, but redemption. Mark Levin retreated from the public eye after that night. No grand tour, no interviews. Just silence, and peace. Occasionally, he'd post short reflections online, quoting the founding fathers, or sharing quiet notes about faith, freedom, and gratitude. Each message carried a sense of calm, the kind you only find after years of noise. In one post, he wrote, "I spent decades fighting for America's soul. Now I'm learning to listen to it again." That message went viral too. Because in a world obsessed with shouting, sometimes the bravest thing you can do, is fall silent. The night Mark Levin cried and resigned on live TV wasn't just television history, it was a mirror held up to all of us. Behind the debates, the ratings, the opinions, there's a beating heart, and sometimes, that heart breaks on air. Mark Levin's story reminds us that no matter how loud the world gets, there's always room for truth, if you're brave enough to speak it, or in his case, to stop speaking altogether. This was the night Fox News stood still, the night a voice became human, and the night Mark Levin said goodbye.